All right, guys, welcome. I hope everyone's having a great week. Welcome to the San Antonio Fabric and Power BI user group. We'll go ahead and get started with the presentation today. If you're here for the first time, welcome. It's great to have you here. If you're returning, it's great to have you back. Here's today's agenda. We're going to review get these folks in real quick. We're going to review who our PUG leaders are, how to get involved with the San Antonio Power BI user group, or PUG. We're going to review the latest Fabric and Power BI updates. And then we're going to jump straight into the presentation topic for data modeling and transformation. We'll round that out with a demo, followed up by questions and any closing comments. All right, so our PUG leaders. We are led by our fearless leader, Lawrence Coffey. Unfortunately, he could not make it today. And same for Ryan Yasmin. She also was not able to make it. And we have Jason. I think I saw Antonio pop in. Antonio, if you're here, do you want to give a quick shout out?
Yes, sorry for being late. I was able to join and looking forward to your presentation.
Fantastic. Glad to have you, sir. And then my name is Chris Alaman, and I will be leading the presentation for today. Okay, so how can you get involved with the San Antonio Power BI user group? Outside of just meet up and joining us on Wednesday, we do have a meetup page where we're trying to start a grassroots movement and get that going as far as conversations and just to continue building on connections and relationships on anything related to Power BI and Fabric. So if you have maybe some roadblocks or some headaches you're trying to overcome or need some help, any shout outs, we have our message board on Meetup and then also on LinkedIn. And then we also have a Microsoft Fabric community page. All of those links I'll send out along with the PowerPoint slide, so that way it's a little bit easier to find. But we are starting to increase our content that we're posting on each of these different mediums. So be on the lookout for those. We'll have different posts of big players in the field, new updates, different articles, all the good stuff. All right, so save the date. Every Wednesday, or every last Wednesday of the month, we meet at 12 o'clock. And I have the link here, and we'll continue to send out RSVP reservation links to everyone's email in the meetup distribution list, and then also send out the reminders via LinkedIn. And that way you can register for next month's session. But really, our Power BI user group is for anyone who has a team or anyone that wants to learn and grow, wants to learn about Power BI and grow in their skill set as a data analyst and how to leverage it. Really, we're trying to work on helping each other solve maybe some issues that you have within your business, or if you're trying to explore new features within Fabric or within Power BI. There's always a ton of new features coming out, and sometimes it's hard to keep up, and just the amount of time to learn each of those features is just not there. So definitely join us every month, and we'll review some of the highlights of the features that caught our attention. All right, so community impact. We are looking for future speakers to present. So if you're interested in speaking, we do have a link where you can volunteer, fill out the request form, and then we'll review it and then be in contact with you to see if what the next steps are. Last year, we did take a survey, and based on your feedback, the most interesting topics that that the community was most interested in were Power BI DAX, data viz, fabric, dashboard design, event streams and real-time analytics, data modeling, data factory, case studies, and admin and governance. And so far we have covered data viz, fabric, and today we're going to cover data modeling and transformation. All right, fabric updates. Like I said before, there are a ton of updates. They're making updates to different features on a continuous schedule. So these are just a few that caught our attention. Copilot AI. Unlock suggested questions from standard prompts in Copilot. So they're definitely hitting the Copilot AI. That's the biggest and latest craze right now. For more details, once I send out the PowerPoint slide, if you click on the link right here, it'll actually take you to the blog so that you can dig more into what these different features are or these different updates are and what there are a bunch that are not listed on here as well. So there just wasn't enough space to put them all. Some of the other updates that were coming out in February, storytelling in PowerPoint. This is actually very neat where you're able to reset the behavior on the PowerPoint slide or the visual within the PowerPoint slide. So you're able to add in the refresh data from Power BI without modifying the report definition for the presentations. So I don't know if y'all had issues where you're embedding the Power BI report link in one of you're embedding the Power BI link into your Power BI report, but the data doesn't always refresh. You have to reopen it and make sure that you're looking at the correct data set so that it refreshes. It doesn't always do that automatically. It's a manual process. So this is something that's now going to be set automatically. So that way, if you have a live dashboard or a live report within one of your PowerPoint presentations, you're not looking at stale data. The tree map has gained an enhancement. There are 3 new tiling methods. So if you're a user of the tree map or have use cases for that, check out the update. They'll dive more into what those different tiling methods are. And the newest thing to come out with Fabric is the Tyndall scripting experience. A lot of potential there. There's a lot of excitement around the community with what that can do. If you want to learn more about it, just go to the Microsoft Fabric, and they've got tons of documentation on there. And there's a lot of different YouTube videos and articles that are being written about it. And they're always coming out with something new. So Tyndall View is a new view in Power BI Desktop for those that aren't familiar with it. That lets you script, modify, and apply changes to the semantic model being edited. So you're able to do some of these mass edits on your tabular model, which is fantastic. And then for those of you that are connecting to Snowflake, they are working on the Snowflake connector and they have made improvements to it. So just be aware that if you are using those connectors, that they are working on it. So keep an eye out for that in case something does look funky. This one for the new connector is still in preview, so they're still working out some bugs on that. And then for more information, if you click on this link, it'll take you to the blog post. All right, so going to the Power BI space, a couple updates. This one is going to be really important. Wanted to highlight this one. Power BI Desktop, you need to upgrade to the 64-bit version if you're not using it. Otherwise, you're going to have the 32-bit, which is going to be no longer supported, and you'll have security vulnerabilities. So be aware that you need to do that sooner than later. And same thing for upgrading Power BI Desktop. You need the February 25 version in order to continue using Copilot. So if you do not upgrade your Power BI Desktop, you may notice that there are some bugs with the Copilot chat pane, or it may start acting funky. So be aware of that. All right, and then Copilot and Power BI mobile apps is now available on iPad and Android tablets. That'd be very useful, and that'd be really neat to use. And then conditional formatting support for visual calculations, that's in preview, published to web support in Azure Maps. They've come a long way with Azure Maps, so it's great to see that they're still making enhancements to that visual. Definitely a big improvement from the original core visual. And then also the Snowflake connector, which is also related to not just Fabric, but also to Power BI. And then we have the live edit of semantic models in Direct Lake, and you can do that in Power BI Desktop. So that's something exciting, but be aware it is in preview, so they are still working on it and making updates to it and ironing out some bugs. All right, so today our topic is data modeling and transformation. So here's our session takeaways. Learn to import and connect multiple data sources. Understand relationships, hierarchies, and how to structure data. And optimize your model for easier report creation and responsiveness. And at any point, if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in. Take yourself off of mute, or if you want, you can raise your hand with the little raise hand icon in the Teams chat, or just post your message in the Teams chat. All right, so before we begin, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're going to go over a few terms just to make sure that on the modeling side, we all understand what I'm talking about. So there are three types of models. You have the conceptual or the what model. This is kind of like the whiteboard. When you're talking to your stakeholders and you're reviewing what they want, what business process or what their use case is, this is really just describing what they want to have done. And I'll dig more into that here in just a moment. And then we have the logical, which is the how of the details. Those are going to be you're adding more details to the different tables that you have decided were needed for that use case. And then you have the physical, which is the how of the implementation, and that's where your database administrators come in. And we're not going to really focus on that today. We're going to mainly focus on the logical model today. We're going to assume that you've gone through and you know what your stakeholders are needing for this use case. So each level, conceptual, physical, and logical, can involve different roles from your team. So be aware of that. This is not a one person is doing everything. Okay, so going a little bit deeper into the conceptual model. As I had mentioned before, this is the whiteboard or the data model. And the model doesn't go into the how at all. That's really important. This is more just capturing the attributes and relationships. For example, you have the route. And we know that you have your airline that has a route. Multiple airlines can take the same route, but we're not really going into the true how all of this is, the true attributes for all of these for the different airlines. We're just keeping it simple. We just know that there's an airline and that there's a route. And then there's also a schedule that is related to the route. So we're not really getting into the how. That's where the logical model comes in. So now we're going to fill in the details of the conceptual model. That's where, if you notice, now we're adding in to the route table, we have our source or the airport, the destination airport, and our stops. So now we're getting more into the granular details. Excuse me. And then we're going to do the same thing for airline by adding the name of the airline, the call sign, etc. So you get the idea. We're adding more descriptors and more attributes to each of these different tables. So we're filling in the details, and this is really going to be how the business looks at the data. And typically at this point, this is the logical model is going to be created by the architect or the business analyst, depending on how your business or your company is organized. Okay, moving on. These are a couple terms you probably have heard, hopefully have heard, or if you're not familiar with it, these are going to be key points or key pillars with data modeling, especially on the Power BI side. You have dimension tables and fact tables. So for the dimension tables, they describe business entities, the things that you model. They're entities that include products, people, places, and concepts, including time itself. Very common example is the date table. And that is just should be a standard table that is brought into every Power BI report, and we'll talk more on that here in a little bit. So the dimensions are really just your attributes they're describing. Now, the fact table is a little bit different. Your fact tables are your stored observations or events. So when an event occurs, such as when you purchase something, when you are selling something, when you purchase an item, that'll go down as a transaction in the fact table, and each transaction will have its own record or line item. And then if you have a return, that will also be tracked as a return because that is a separate event or a separate transaction. So that you can take that and apply it towards not only sales orders, but for stock balances, exchange rates, temperatures, anything that can be measured. All right, so we've covered dimension tables, fact tables, and the 3 types of models. Are there any questions so far? Whoops. I didn't mean to raise my hand on that one. Okay. So almost done getting through the key terms. We just have a few more to go through. Schema. Schema is a very common key term where that is essentially the organization of the data, the organization of data as a blueprint of how the database is constructed. So those are your column headers. And then we are going to be working with particular today, the star schema. That is the simplest style of a data mart schema. Excuse me, consists of one or more fact tables referencing any number of dimension tables. And then when all of that star schema is brought into Power BI as a data set, you have the semantic model, which is a collection of objects like you have your tables, your columns, your DAX measures that provide meaning to your data. That's your semantic. And then you model real-world processes like sales. And today we'll be working with a sales table to replicate something similar to this. Now, a semantic model typically has 3 parts. You have the Power Query, which has your expressions and your partitions, or your different tables that you're working on, and we'll go more into that once we are live in Power Query. And then you have the logical model, and then you have DAX. All right, so that covers the key terms. Just make sure we're all on the same page. I'm going to switch screens here, and we're going to jump into Power BI Desktop. Hold on. All right, so I have a blank report. I'm just going to start from scratch. So my main objective right here, and I've already talked to my stakeholders, and they want to analyze the sales data. And they want to know they want to gain insights and explore it and analyze it. And they want to build reports off of it. However, we don't have a model. We don't have that data curated other than it's a large flat table. And we want to take that large flat table and we're going to turn it into a properly formatted and designed star schema. So what I'm going to do is I am going to connect, and it just so happens the sales team has this data or this file saved on a SharePoint site. So what I'm going to do is I want to connect to their SharePoint site, and that's where the data is going to be continuously updated. Now we're keeping this very simple and hypothetical, so please just bear with me on that. We know this isn't necessarily best practice and trying to make it as real world as possible without getting too real world, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect data. I'm going to click on more, and then I'm going to go to my SharePoint folder. And Now I typed in, or I went to my SharePoint site and copied the beginning part of the URL. Now notice I didn't go into, or I didn't go past the name of my SharePoint site. I didn't include any of the files or go directly to the file path. I'm just keeping it generic right here to just the SharePoint site. And then we're going to navigate to the file from, there we go, from Power Query. And then let me switch gears right here. I need to switch screens. All right, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time today in Power Query. Okay, so you'll notice that we have a table, but it doesn't really have doesn't have our, where I have all my data stored. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch it from a SharePoint.files to SharePoint.contents. It's going to view the SharePoint site a little bit differently, and I actually have all of my data stored in a file or a library called datasets. And I have a flat sales table, and we're going to bring that in. And so now we've connected to the SharePoint site, and I'm just going to go ahead, just for reference, I'm going to name this as my stage flat sales. Okay, so the objective here is what we want to change this flat table into a star schema. So we need to split the columns up into two categories. One, we need our facts or our sales data, and then we need our descriptors or our dim tables. The reason we're going to do that is because Power BI works best in a star schema. You have a large flat table, it will work up to a certain point. It is not scalable. It can make your DAX a lot more difficult as you get into more complex scenarios. So best practice, no, don't use a flat table. Transform it into a star schema. Now, if someone said, well, flat table is faster, yes, in some cases it is, up to a point. But again, at some point, as your data continues to grow, get more use cases or more requests to analyze that data, at some point it's going to break. So from the get-go, we're going to go ahead and transform this and make sure that our model is sound and that it is scalable. All right, so we have our table that is now brought in. What I'm going to do is I want to disable the load because I don't need to actually store the data yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to a new group, and I want to organize this as my stage folder. So that way I know that this is my stage table right here, and I'm going to reference off of that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start by creating my dim tables. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoot this over, disable the load, and I am going to move this to a new folder I'm creating. It's called our create dim tables. What I'm doing here is this is really going to help organize all the different transformations. And keep in mind that what you do today, you may not remember 2 or 3 months from now. So this will help keep things organized, not just for you in the future, but also for anyone that needs to jump into this report and make any edits. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna name this my, this is going to be, let's say, we'll start with store. I'm just naming this as my store attributes right here. Now, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit where we didn't really go through the data. But if you take a look, we have our date key, discount amount, discount quantity, return amount. It's your basic sales data. There's really nothing too crazy about this one. We're just gonna keep it simple, focused on the principles. All right, and then you'll notice right here, we start to have store type, store name, store manager, store status, and then we have employee count and product name. So what I want to do is I noticed that we have all the products and stores. So those should be the two tables that I'm going to create. So I can take this very wide flat table and I can make it a lot skinnier. And that's going to help with performance, scalability, and then also from a developer standpoint, it's going to help with your DAX measures, make your authoring a whole lot more simple. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the store attributes right here, and I am going to choose those specific columns. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to unselect those, and I'm going to click on store. I'm going to select all of the store types, store name, store manager. And just because I've worked with this data, I know that there's the employee count that belongs to the store. So I'm going to click on that. So now you'll notice we have store type, store name, all of our store attributes. What I'm going to do right now is we need to develop a primary key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and go to add column. And then I want to index because I want to create a primary key. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to create that primary key so I can relate this table to my fact table or my sales table. So now I have, actually, you know what? I need a backup step. Store name is duplicated. So I actually need to remove those duplications so that I have one store name or one unique value. There we go. We have 300 distinct and 306 unique. Okay, now I can add my index column. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that from index, and to save a query step, I'm going to change the index to store key. And then I want to rinse and repeat and do that the same thing with not only my store, but I need to change this to my product attributes. And I want to disable that load. And then I'm going to go back to my columns right here and select my product columns. Oh, I did that wrong. I need to deselect first. Okay, so choose columns and then deselect, and I want my products. And then right here, I've got all my products. And then I need to go into my product name, remove my duplicates. Whoops, what happened? Did not select all of those. There we go. Okay, now remove my duplicates. And what I'm looking for is, okay, I have 1,000 distinct and 1,000 unique. So now I have a true unique value for each of my products. And I can go ahead and add in my index column. And again, I'm going to change that from index to my product key. So now I have two tables right here. And I'm going to go ahead and scoot those over to my product tables, my prod tables, not product, prod. Stage prod. Oh, I did not want to move that. That should be referenced. And referenced. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't need the data to be cached or saved in Power BI on the report side. I just need to run through the calculations. I would actually want it to be the end product or the table to be stored as my dim product table. So I want to label that as my dim product, and I want to keep the enabled load right here checked because these are the two tables that I am targeting that I want. So now I have my dim product and I have my dim store. Dim tables, they're good. I like those. Okay, so now I got to, how do I link these two tables to the fact table? But we got to keep in mind with our fact table right here, we are still one large flat table. All I did was reference this, so I need to trim this up a little bit. The reason I want to do that is because it's a lot easier to perform your merges over a skinnier table than a wider table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the rows that I don't need, or the columns that I don't need. So I want to go into I know that employee count I don't need. I have my store. And out of all my stores, I just need the store name so I can relate my fact table to my store table. Oh, you know what? This one broke. I just broke my tables. Why is that? That's because they are referencing this one, and I just took away what they needed. So I'm actually going to take the remove columns. I want to back that out. And what I want to do is I'm actually going to reference this, and I want to scoot this over to a new group. And this is going to be I want to name this create primary keys. Because essentially that's what we're going to do here. So we got my stage, create dim. I'm going to scoot my prod down, just keep it in the proper order, undisable that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back and remove columns. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to do what I just did again, and then we should be in good shape. So I'm going to choose the columns, and I'm going to employee. I need to remove that one. And if I'm moving too fast, I apologize. I'm trying to get us done, finished on time without staying over. So I've got a few more neat things I want to show after this. Okay, so then we've removed the employee column, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove the remainder of the store columns. But I do want to keep the store name. The reason for that is that was going to be the way I can relate this table to my store attribute table. And that's what we're going to do now. I'm only going to do this for the store table, and then I do have the finished product, and I'm going to show what that looks like to help save time. So that way we're not spending time just doing the same thing over. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to label this as, actually this is going to be step 2. I want to keep these in order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge the store to sales. I'll lay that first step. So my first transformation, second transformation, and technically it's not sales, but we'll say it's step 1, remove columns. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge right here, and I'm going to find the store name. And then I want to go to my store attributes and click on store name. And you'll notice we have all of our columns matching, which is a great sign. I'm going to click OK. And then now we have our table. And I'm going to expand it. But here's the thing. I don't need all of these columns right here. That's the goal, is to remove as many columns as possible, the unnecessary columns, and just keep the one that you need. And in this case, it is going to be the store key. So I'm going to click OK on that. And now we have our primary key that relates to our store attribute, or actually our dim store right here. Okay, so now that works. We're good there. And what I did was I went ahead and did the same, took the same steps and applied it towards our product tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to a different report that has all those steps already completed. So hang on with me just for 1 second as I switch screens. Okay, so I have basically the same report. So we removed the columns, we merged our store to sales, and then I did the same thing where I merged product to step 2, or our second transformation. And then I'm going to scoot over here. You'll notice that now we have our store key and our product key. And then I'm going to go and remove columns. But what columns am I going to remove? I'm going to remove oh wait, I need to go back to source. I'm going to remove my store name and my product name because we don't need those anymore. That's why we have our store key and our product key. Okay, so now we've got all of that taken care of. You'll notice right here, I went ahead and referenced them one more time to go into fact sales, or to create the final table called fact sales. We have our dim store, our dim product, and I did not have a dim date table. I had talked about or mentioned earlier that you need to have a dim date table just to follow best practice, so you can use your uh, your uh, your DAX functions work off of a dim table best. Okay, so I actually went and connected to a data flow because our wonderful data analytics team has a dim date table that they have already made for us. So what I did was I went into new source and I clicked on or typed in data flow. And then I'm going to navigate to the workspace that has our data flows. And in this case, the dim date is in the our general production, which has just one table in this case, and that's our dim date. Now, what's really neat about this is that there's only one table that the company is using, and it's all maintained in one spot. And now every report can use it, and if there are any changes, any of those changes are going to flow downstream. So there's no more hunting and pecking away at the keyboard trying to figure out which tables are using what date table, and if you have to go and update it. It's a one-stop shop. So all of this is now done. We officially have our 4 tables: our fact table for sales, our dim store table, our dim product, and our dim date. So that is it. I'm going to go ahead and click close and apply, and then we're going to take a look to see what the semantic model looks like. And I'm going to once again share screen. And this is our report. And this is what our model looks like. So a couple things here that you may notice is that I went ahead and put my dim tables up top, and then I have my fact tables right here. Now, this is really just a preference. Some folks, if you want to go downstream or upstream, you can change it to go the other way. If you want to start with your fact table, it really just depends on how you want to view the model. But what I want to point out is I went ahead and did a little cleanup. My product key, I went ahead and hid the keys, not just in the fact sales, but also in the dim store. And this one, dim date, does not have that. Oh, here it is, dim product. And then also, just a little cleanup right here on the dim date table. If you click the 3 dots, make sure to mark it as a date table. That way, Power BI knows to recognize for the time and intelligence functions that this is our date table, and then we can use those time intelligence functions properly without running into any issues. So another thing with cleaning up, if you have, let's say, a number of columns that really these should not be summarized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on each of those by holding down the control button. And I'm going to go ahead and change the data type, not from whole number, but I want to change it from not sum to just none. And notice I'm able to quickly change those data types without having to go through them one at a time. Now, keep in mind, you can only do this in the model view pane. If you're in the report view right here, unfortunately, you're gonna have to do it one at a time, and that can get very tedious. So, okay, so now we have our model. We've done a lot of work. Now, how can we take this model and disseminate it so that other analysts can build reports off of this? Now, this is where it gets really cool. Keep in mind the scalability and reusability theme right here. All of this we're going to say is now officially has been vetted. It's in a good spot where we want to build reports off of. How do we ensure that only a select few have access to it, and that if there's anything that needs to be edited, that only those people can edit or make changes to this model? And we're not taking this report, downloading it, and then sending that report through Teams or email or through SharePoint for another analyst or someone else to look at that report to then go in to edit that report. And then we have other business decisions being made off of a report that was edited and was not the true intention of that model. So we want to make sure all of that's held down or is under lock and key to a degree that only the people that can edit it know what's happening and making those edits and appropriate edits to it. So if we need to add any columns, that all of that's handled on the, in our case, we have a center of excellence. Our data team does that. They would handle that. So how do we ensure that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on publish. I want to save. And remember, there is no report on this one yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish this to my prod. I have a workspace called prod semantic models. And I want to publish this model to that workspace, which all of our only certain folks have access to it. And I'm going to go ahead and got it. Perfect. Good. Okay. So now that model is stored in Power BI service. Within that workspace, only certain people have access to edit and download from that workspace. But we do have other folks that are able to connect to that model through read permissions. So if I'm an analyst and I want to analyze that sales data, how do I get to it if it's in service? That's actually very easy. I want to hop over to a different report right here. I have another blank report. So I have a request to analyze that data, and I need to connect to that data source. So I'm going to click on blank report, and I'm going to go back to get data right here. And I'm going to click not on data flows, not on SQL Server, not more, but I'm going to click on Power BI semantic models. And you'll notice I have a model right here I can connect to. So I'm going to click connect. Now things are happening in the background and we are officially connected to that model. And you'll notice we have our dim date, our dim product, our dim store, and our dim fact. Everything that we just worked on is now available for anyone that has read permission to that semantic model. They are connected to it and they cannot make edits. They can make some, such as creating DAX measures. They cannot create calculated columns. If you click right here, you'll notice that there is no calculated column option. That's because we're connected live or a direct query connect to the original semantic model. And what's neat about this is you can have a workspace specifically for semantic models. And I can build a report off of this semantic model, and I can publish it into other workspaces. So there may be, let's say, accounting may have a need for this access to this data for their use case, or maybe even the sales team needs to have access to it for, of course, product sales. But then you have the product team who wants to get inventory or analyze how their products are doing. So those are three potentially different workspaces that are using the exact same model. They're all using the exact same data, and there's no question as far as where they're getting their information from. So that really helps with building the trust with our end users as well. All right, so now what if there are any changes? What if we need to make a change to, let's say, well, sales, the way we define sales can have many different meanings, or profit, depending on which department you're in. But as an organization, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to say that we have a sales for the organization, which is just going to be sum of sales, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to the original report that I made. And I'm going to create a quick measure off to the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I created that measure, and I want to republish it to the report or to the workspace. So now I am going into the model. I had a request to make a change to it. And I am republishing it to service. All right, so now it's been published. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit refresh. And if everything worked correctly, there it is, sum of sales. So now what's really cool about this is just by a quick refresh, I now have the new logic or the new measure, and I didn't have to go into many different reports to track down and recreate that measure. It's all in that one semantic model. But what's even better is if I am, let's say, the sales team, and I want to, maybe my bonus is based off of how many sales are made in a month or how much I sell. Well, if you take a look right here, I can't edit how that measure is calculated. It's all behind the scenes. So now you have tighter control where that measure is defined by the organization and has been verified and validated by your data team. And that logic is it. No one can go in there and change it. So that's a good way to keep control over your logic while still allowing for reusability. All right, so that was a lot that I flew by or went through. Now, I hope I didn't go through it too quickly. If I did, I apologize. So, are there any questions about what I just went over? Some of the concepts, of course, those concepts, you get a lot more involved depending on the organization and depending on what your policies are and how your analytics team is and engineering and IT are all organized. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. This is more of a launch pad to kind of just get those ideas rolling of different ways to use it and control your semantic models, but with restricting access and still maintaining the integrity of the model. So,
I have a question.
yes, sir.
So basically during like a typical ETL process, would basically like a process be extracting the data from like a source and then doing some transformation inside Power BI or Snowflake in or SQL in Snowflake, and then loading into like a data warehouse inside Snowflake? I'm just trying to like basically understand the ETL process at a more higher level.
Yeah, that's a good question. That really just it depends on your organization. So but for this use case, let's say if I do not have access, I only have access to certain tables and I need to perform different transformations. I'm using Power BI to leverage the different transformations.
Hmm.
Or even if I don't have that skill set, if I'm not an engineer, the beautiful thing about Power Query is it's very user friendly and that learning curve is very, very small.
Right.
Now, if I have a data engineering team, they're going to use a different set of tools for those heavier lifts. If they have Snowflake, for example, that's your database or your data warehouse or your data lake, however you're using it,
Hmm.
you can use Snowflake to extract the data from your on-prem or cloud sources, dump them into either your data lake or your data warehouse, use Snowflake for the transformations,
Right. Right.
and then you could use Power BI to then pull in those finished tables to then perform additional logic if needed.
Right. Basically, my previous company that I interned for, we used Power BI as well as AtScale. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I think it's like a tool that used sets up like API connections between like a data source and Snowflake. But I just wanted to better understand like how they're all related. And from what I'm getting though is and from what this presentation is or from what during this presentation, I think what I'm getting is that Power BI and Snowflake can both be used for the data transformation part.
Yes, for sure. And the way we're using it is our engineering team is they've got their transformations they're using that with their knowledge, skill set, and expertise that we don't have access to. So this is for this scenario right here, this would be more of if you have less skill and less access to data, this is still going to provide you the tools necessary to get you what you need by creating those sources of truth. or you may have some more restrictions. But ideally, if you can use your transformation or keep your transformation in Snowflake, for example, since you had mentioned that, or in the warehouse in Snowflake, then that would be the best bet. So it
Right.
really just, it depends on every organization is going to be a little bit different, or it could even be a mix of both. Maybe you have some access to some data sources or source systems, but not others. So you may find a blend of the two.
Right. I think in my company also, like AdScale was used for show like basically showing the ERD diagram, like the semantic model, just like how you showed in Power BI. But I'm not sure if it's used for like more complex tasks or something, or more complicated ERD diagrams or something. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, with so in the, let me go to here. This isn't going to be really used for, I think what I'm suspecting you're referring to with the ERD diagrams, like with different third parties where you can diagram your data sets. Is that what you're? Yeah, this is going to be a little bit more limited. This is not going to be nearly to that scale.
Right. Okay.
Yep. And there's other programs like Title Editor where you can hook into the semantic models. That would then just provide a plethora of different features and just a whole new landscape of tools that you can use to manipulate the model, gain insights, and really you can use scripts you can write scripts to do different things. So this is really more of just it'll get you a long ways, but at some point it'll only go so far.
Right.
Your questions? You got anything else?
It's pretty much it for now. So basically, Power BI mainly you can use for if you have like limited number of data sets, or if you're just working with like a few data sets. But there is other platforms I think that if you're working at a company, you can manage multiple like several data sets. So
Yeah, I wouldn't even put that limitation on it. It's not really a number of data sets per se. The way Power BI works, depending on how it's set up, you can create as many workspaces as you want. There's no price for those. Now, once you get into the SKUs and with the whole cost on the data transformation and whatnot, but we're going to put that off to the side. But if you have let's 4 or 5 different source systems, and then you have different cloud servers that you're working on, you can tap into all of those, create tables, and in fact, that's what we're doing. We're going into all of our systems and creating source of truth tables, where we have our customer dimension table, we have our sales table, and we may have 3 or 4 different versions of our customer table depending on which source system it is that it's coming from, because they have different business units. And then we're dumping all of those in right. We use Snowflake too. So we're dumping those into Snowflake, but as part of our transition, because we're converting into Snowflake, we're using Power BI as a holding pattern where we're dumping them to Power BI. So we're utilizing Power BI extensively in that respect.
By holding pattern, do you just mean like it's also holding basically like structured and clean data, and
Correct.
then
Yep.
right? Okay.
Yeah. So I'll say my skill set compared to the engineers is not to their level. So what we're doing is we've gone through the data validation process and make sure with our end users that, hey, this is what they're seeing is what they're expecting. Everything's good. And then as we're going through the transition, because ultimately we want to get that under better data governance, under tighter control, going through their data engineering, quality assurance checks, that all of that's on the up and up with them. So we'll hand over our logic whenever they're ready for whatever table or whatever they request from us or whatever's next up on that list. And we'll hand it over to them and then they'll do their thing. But in the end, the 2 tables should look the same.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. I'll let someone else ask a question.
All right. Well, it looks like it is about a little after 1, and there aren't any more questions. So if at any point you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or anyone in the user group, and I'll send out a link or that PowerPoint presentation. And I do have, and I'll just highlight here real quick, I do have some resources if you're interested in digging more in, learning more about modeling and the star schema. Let me get that screen share up here real quick.
Did you also mention there was like a LinkedIn page for this group?
Yes, sir. I'll throw the PowerPoint. Actually, let me get this shared real quick, and then I'll throw that PowerPoint slide in here.
Okay.
Okay, so there's the additional resources that I highly recommend. These are just a few. There's a ton of information out there. If you just do a Google search on Power BI modeling or star schema, and then you can also click on the links. It'll take you to those articles. So these are a blog by Michael Kowalski, Microsoft MVP on best practices. The blog is a little old. I think it's about 4 years old, but it is still relevant and still very sound. And then, of course, you got the Italians from SQL BI, and they have an article. Scrolling, not helping. Okay, they have an article that explains star schema or single table or a flat table, and they explain why star schema, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, is better. And essentially, the larger your data set gets and the more requests you get, that's where star schema begins to shine. And then you have the data warehouse toolkit and star schema, the complete reference book by Kimball and Chris. And then Pragmatic Works has a great YouTube video on data modeling. It is a 2-hour video, but it goes into much more detail than what we could cover today. All right, so then let's get that link out to y'all.
Yes, I have a kind of one-off random question, but related to Power BI. Are we able to access Power BI outside of it belonging to an organization? Because I think I tried to do it on my own, like independent of like through my company's instance, and I didn't know. I don't think we can't do that, can we?
Well, Power BI is actually on. It's now, I believe that it's a default on any Microsoft product if you have a Microsoft subscription.
Oh, okay.
That
We
is,
do. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
that's correct, Chris. Is that it's just the free lower level version of Power BI. But if you do have a
Okay.
Microsoft subscription, you should be able to download it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I do. It's just, yeah, the one through my organization is definitely a bit beefier, as you can imagine. But I wanted to check just in case I change organizations and whatever place I hop to doesn't have Power BI, I still want to be proficient in it. So thanks so much.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Caroline, keep in mind when you're using the free version for Power BI, and Antonio, thank you for the add-on. So that's good to know that it has been added. The limitations you're going to run up against, there's a number of them just because it is the free version. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. I am trying to get the PowerPoint slide in the chat, but for some reason it's not letting me upload the PowerPoint slide.
Also, Chris, I didn't see it on here, but if they go to the Microsoft, forget what it's called, but where you can pursue getting certifications and stuff like that in the training, don't they on the Power BI data analytics professional certification have more details in the training on how to do the data modeling and stuff as well? I know that
Yes,
you went through that.
Yeah, Microsoft Learning. Let me I'll throw that link in there. Good call out. So there's a link for that one. I'm getting the oh, Power BI. There's another one too. I'm trying to get the link from our SharePoint site so I can send out to y'all. For some reason, it's not letting me upload. All right, got it here. Copy link. Okay, here's the link to the PowerPoint slide. If y'all could, one of y'all could click on it to see if you can view it. People in your organization. Nope, that's people in the org. Okay, hold on. Anyone, I create a new one. Okay, there you go. Let me edit that real quick. All right, so that one should be open to everybody. Hey, Haas, would you mind clicking on that link and see if you're able to
Yes.
view it?
Yes. Let's see. It's just asking me to accept the terms of use. Let's see, it clicked accept, but okay, there we go. I think I got it. Oh, it says access denied.
All right, hold on. Let me delete that. All right, maybe that one. That one says anyone with a link can view. So unless Microsoft is lying, that one should work.
Still says access denied for me, but maybe it works for someone else.
Sometimes it might be depending if you're on your organization's website, or I mean network, excuse me.
Mhm.
Because yeah, when I'm clicking on them, I think my organization has them blacklisted.
Oh, that's a good point. BA, thank you. He got no, yep. Okay, cool. So that may be an organization policy. Good
Right.
point. All right, and then Tejas, all the links are in there. If you scroll through, it'll have the LinkedIn meetup and then also the Microsoft Fabric community link.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, we're about 10 after. Thank you for staying by, staying past the 1 o'clock meeting end time. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, thanks for holding this meeting, Chris. It's been really cool. This is my first time being here, so it's nice to meet all y'all.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. Thank you for the meeting.
For sure, it's great to have y'all. Join us next month. We'll send out more information on the topic and hope to see y'all.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Antonio. Bye, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks.